All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today, and great to have a new guest, first timer on Halitics, my old supervisor at Our Revolution, Mike Oles. How you doing, Mike?
Hey Hal, how's it going? First time caller, long time listener.
Well, I appreciate that, and I especially the long time listening bit. I didn't know you made Halitics a part of your regular routine, but I'm certainly flattered if you do. So I called you a Heartland organizer. You wanted it to be Midwest. Do you have a issue with the word Heartland? I like Heartland, but some people feel like it's like diminishes the coast, right? Like the country's heart is the Midwest. But I'm good with it myself.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling either way. It could be Rust Belt, it could be Heartland, it can be Bible Belt, it can be red state organizing, right? There's a lot of ways to frame this conversation, but obviously here in Indiana, we are in the Red Belt, the Bible Belt, the Rust Belt, and the Heartland. So if we're the Heartland, we got a sick heart, a very sick heart that we're trying to heal up and get strong and get right.
Well, you say it's red, it's Republican, but not so long ago, 2008, in fact, Indiana was a blue state. At least it voted for Barack Obama. So what happened? What was the confluence of events that caused you to go from Dan Quayle as the favorite son to Barack Obama and then right back into the Republican fold?
Yeah, as somebody who loves Indiana history and Indiana and just politics and the fight to make Indiana a better place, there's a dueling history here, right? We're the home of Eugene Debs, probably the greatest union organizer of all time, American union organizer, the guy who led massive strikes, ran for president from jail, great war protester. And at the same time, we were a state in the 1920s that were sort of one terrible violent act away from being a Klan state, completely controlled from governor down to dog catcher. And only this violent act in the Great Depression probably prevented Indiana from becoming a full-fledged Klan state in 1929 to 1930. And we're home. We're home to Kurt Vonnegut, probably I'd say my favorite author of all time, and somebody who's hilarious and funny, who grew up here in Indianapolis, and it really tells the progressive story of American Indiana better than anybody else of that era. And so Indiana is a complicated place because we're deeply blue collar, lead the country in manufacturing, great farmland. Indianapolis is to me a fine city, and we are but we're kind of stuck in this this role of Heartland, Bible Belt, home with a modern day Klan that came close to winning, to the dissidents, Eugene Debs and Kurt Vonnegut, and the intellectuals that really had a great critique of America, and a patriotic and great critique of America. So that being said, in 2008, I was my daughter was born in August of 2008, my first daughter, and I had spent a lot of time in the progressive movement. Had in college in the late 90s, I was an internship for a group called the New Party, which was going to go out there and take on the Daley machine in Chicago, and the Daley 2 machine. Old man Daley had passed, and Daley Jr. had sort of built a similar type of machine, but more built on the power of corporations and money than racial terrorism, like Daley the first. Though there were elements of racial terrorism to that regime also. And we, the summer of 98 and 99 on the southwest side of Chicago, we won a city council race, and against the Daley machine, and Barack Obama was a dues-paying member of this group. Now look it up, a New Party. He denies that he ever was a dues-paying member, but I feel like I have a story that tells me that that they covered that up, that he was actually Obama was sort of an organizer with us. He was obviously a professor at the time, had just run for Congress and gotten beat, but a superstar in the making. And so when Obama won in 2008, it was my daughter had just been born. I had been around the Obama movement as a political organizer in the late '90s, and then in the early 2000s as a union organizer. And so had done press conferences with Obama, had been around him and his team, and so I moved back to Indiana in 2004 to start a family and get married and buy a house, and so I knew the Obama movement pretty well, and one of my all time favorite moments in Indiana history is the 1968 race when the Robert F. Kennedy runs this amazing campaign to he jumps into the presidential race and then wins Indiana in 1968, and it's sort of this amazing moment where you bring together the civil rights movement with politics, and Kennedy gets it right, and and then on April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated, and Robert Kennedy is in Indianapolis that night, and gives, I think, a very powerful speech about the future of politics and where we can go if we all can work together and keep building this movement. And um, and then literally the next month, right, 2 months later, he's assassinated himself. And so up to that point, that was the great hope of American politics, that we could have another Robert F. Kennedy 1968 primary. And so in 2008, we got it with Barack Obama. He beats Hillary Clinton, or ties her 50-50 in 2008, and then wins the presidency, right, and wins Indiana. And on election day, Barack Obama was at union halls in Indianapolis making phone calls to voters and making sure he won Indiana, and had been at those rallies with Obama and seen him move around the state. It was we had flipped Indiana blue, and my 2-month-old daughter at the time, she would never have to live in a Republican George W. Bush era misery, right? The Democrats had finally figured it out, that we were gonna, rule in a way that would destroy the Republican Party. And
well, obviously that in the end that didn't work out. I'm just jumping in, Mike. Sorry, I think we're talking over each other there for just a moment. I apologize. Obviously, that didn't work out. By 2012, the state was back in the Republican fold, where it's remained ever since. My take, I'm just going to give you my quick synopsis, is there's real hope in Indiana among the blue collar population there, working class folks, that the Democrats would champion. Manufacturers would champion, unions would actually try to fight for, would try to make things better for them and fight for policies that would lead to, a fairer, juster state. And that didn't happen. And as a result, in his own words, they returned to guns, gods, and gays as the issues du jour and of the year, rather than, fair days pay for fair days work, decent working conditions, good schools, health care. Is that fair?
Yeah, look, I would say this, that when we won in Indiana in 2008, it was a wake-up call to the Republican Party that they were in trouble, right? I mean, the economy had collapsed. People were losing their homes. Like, it was a real terrifying moment in history, right? And the Democrats, especially in Indiana, they went to sleep, right? They went to sleep. Personally, I thought there was going to be this massive investment of organizing in Indiana, right? That we had just gotten this blue state. We are going to, Barack Obama was a community organizer. He understood how important it was to build this, hopefully a statewide infrastructure that would have, promoted the progressive movement and the progressive values and the causes that we all love, to make that reality. But what happened is that once he got in office, the Obama coalition in Indiana disappeared. It was nowhere to be found. And what you had is it was sort of like to use a Star Wars reference, it was sort of the Republicans went all Darth Vader on the Democrats and hunted down every last Jedi they could. Every last state legislator, every state senator, they would spend $500,000 on races that used to cost $30,000. And they went from losing in '08 to getting a gerrymandered a gerrymandered state house in 2012, and it's been that way ever since. And we've been in the super minority now for 20 years, and it was because we had a 2-year window to make something good happen, and we went back to sleep. Some people say we went back to brunch, right? But everybody patted themselves on the back like they had done something big in 2008, and very quickly it was the Republicans went on the offensive. Democrats weren't ready for it and got slaughtered, and ended up gerrymandering the state house. So now we're in the second decade of a gerrymander, and we've lost. Democrats have lost all power in the state. At local levels, there's still Democratic power, but I think the gerrymander does weird things to the minority party, and it creates very safe districts that where the Democrats don't have to do any work, right? And so you have politicians who don't build any movement, don't build any excitement, just kind of they don't have to run for re-election, and so it's a rough world out there, and in Indianapolis, the sort of the capital of Indiana, right? It's a blue dot, and it went from being sort of the heartland of Republican power to the with back in the 70s and 80s, it was this Republican super city that became Democratic, and now it's a very liberal progressive city. But the politics of that was that the Democratic Party in Marion County did a lot to keep people away from running for office. They tried to they would intimidate dissidents. They had a machine trying to lock people out of running in the primaries, and so it was a so you got to figure that out too, right? How do you how do you work a system where the progressives are iced out in the Democratic Party, right? And then you have this Republican superculture that is just getting stronger and stronger and wilder. So
what would you recommend? I mean, you are an organizer, you're an advisor. That is that's what you do. That's your profession. Is politicians come to you, people who are running campaigns. You're right now working to save a beautiful forest in northern Indiana, which apparently the Democratic mayor of Hammond, Indiana, is not concerned about. I mean, he doesn't care about the environment. So if you were consulted by the Democratic Party,
you want people to take a time machine and go back to 1963 Chicago style politics, just get up on I-90 and drive through Hammond, Indiana, and you'll experience an old school Democratic machine, 1963 style, and so Hammond, Indiana is a small city, 70,000, 80,000 people, right on Lake Michigan. It's the only city of Indiana that borders the city of Chicago, and last night I was like, I kind of roughed up by a couple cops. I mean, not really roughed up, but was dragged out of a meeting because residents there's a grassroots uprising trying to save an almost 5,000-year-old dune forest, one of the rarest ecosystems left on Earth. And this idiot mayor wants to run a bridge through it and destroy these 32 acres of Eden in the middle of one of the most urban, most polluted cities in Indiana. Right there, that pond. It's just an amazing little Eden in a working class community, and the mayor, from what it seems like, wants to build a bridge here and tear everything down and put up housing in the middle of this place. And so there's a grassroots rebellion to save the Briar East Woods. And last night at the city council meeting, this mayor brought in 100 goons and ghouls from the city who work for the city or family members of the city, and kept him in a meeting for 3 hours so that he could lock out the 100+ protesters that had shown up to save this very rare ecosystem. And just kind of an amazing moment. And people in Hammond are very nice. This is a very strong union town, very democratic, but not a lot of protesting and fighting, right? And so we got a little annoyed that we had got locked out, and so I kind of went up to the close as I could to the mayor's office and started talking pretty loudly about how this was screwed up, and how had worked in hundreds of cities across the country, and I've never seen a mayor and a city council act this way, and just kind of amazing. And so I got dragged out by 3 cops, but yeah, so that's kind of stuff you deal with in Indiana. This is the industrial heartland. Hammond. If you look up Rust Belt, Hammond might be the belt buckle of the Rust Belt, and
Yeah, it's right next to Gary, right? And it's in some ways rougher than Gary. I think there's a scene in the movie The Fugitive where they arrest one of the men who escaped with the fugitive Harrison Ford, and it's in Hammond, and it's just an absolute industrial wasteland. It's a post-apocalyptic American wasteland.
Well, there are parts of that. I mean, that kind of surround Hammond. I would say the Hammond kind of feels like you're just like in a Chicago neighborhood, to be honest, right? But there's definitely if you look at some of the biggest polluters in the country, they're all within a smokestack of Hammond. And last night I thought I was going to have to go, all Harrison Ford on The Fugitive because of the way they were roughing me up and talking tough, and I was talking tough back. And but yeah, so that's kind of here we are in the age of Trump 2.0. Our government is under attack, and in Indiana the Democrats act this way, and it's about preserving their little personal fiefdoms instead of building a winning coalition that's going to protect worker rights, protect our environment, and they rebuild our communities. And so I feel like Hammond, the city of 70,000 people, is with a mayor like this is sort of a symptom for what I think Rust Belt communities are dealing with across the area. And now, Hal, me and you, we've been to a lot of protests together, right, in the Midwest, and didn't we get kicked out of a Trump rally or two?
I don't know if that was I who was with you who got kicked out of a Trump rally. I didn't go to any Trump rallies, although I interviewed somebody at a Trump rally, but I wasn't actually at the rally at the time.
Yeah. It might have been a little bit before your time, but we, I've been kicked out of many Trump rallies. They were nicer these cops last night, which was pretty funny. And but at the end of the day, though, like there has to be an uprising. People have to get to the streets. People have to demand more out of their leadership and hopefully take their leadership over. So I would say in Hammond right now, we're a couple of years away from the next mayor's race, but I think it's on. Like, progressives can take the city over and end a bad regime if we get our act together.
Well, there's kind of a ongoing debate on the sort of far left fringes of the progressive movement, whether the Democratic Party can be redeemed, whether the appropriate way to try to reverse damage done by Trump, but also by Biden, by Trump before Biden, by Obama before Trump, is the right prescription taking the Democratic Party back to the FDR LBJ party, or is that not possible, or that's too heavy a lift, and a better option, a more plausible path is to create to join and build a viable alternative emerging party? I always was of the mindset, certainly when I worked with you at Our Revolution, that the solution was to build a progressive Democratic Party. I don't feel that's really possible. I think we have to activate folks to either vote Green, to run as Greens, or as some alternative emerging party. I think you disagree with me. We've discussed this, but I want your reaction to all of that. And if you do disagree, how you think the Democratic Party can be redeemed, either in Indiana or nationwide.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the Democratic Party with Joe Biden lied to us, screwed up, got us into this awful ditch, right? I mean, we all worked on Bernie 2020, Bernie 2016. And one of the great moments in Indiana history was when I was with Bernie in 2016 in downtown Indianapolis, and we declared a victory that night against Hillary Clinton. And Bernie won Indiana, and it was an amazing night. And then Bernie came back to Indianapolis in 2017 and 2018 for big rallies trying to save the Carrier factory, a steelworker union plant that was going to be offshore to Mexico. And there were two politicians, right, that really took that cause up. One was Donald Trump and one was Bernie Sanders. And if you watch the 2016 debate with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the first thing out of his mouth is the Carrier factory. The very first words out of his mouth, first debate, 2016. And, this free trade agenda had no answers for that critique, right? And of course, Donald Trump is complicated. We did save the factory in Indianapolis. Today, the Carrier factory has more workers there now than it did in 2016. There was a layoff, but now everybody is hired back at that factory who wanted a job to come back. And so that was an amazing moment where, I think you saw this sort of class uprising to save this factory and a real critique of the neoliberal free trade agenda. And what I never understood is, as somebody who hates Donald Trump, despises him, if that dumbass had just saved one or two more factories the way that he had saved Carrier, he would have been reelected in 2020. So we traveled the country saying, "Hey, Donald Trump, like you said, you're going to save our jobs, but why are these factories, closing down? In Iowa, the oldest factory in Iowa closed down under Donald Trump, and it was offshored, and it was a federal contractor, and he never answered, right? And so now on Trump 2.0, right, we're stuck with this awful, Elon Musk fueled just power grab where, we are in like a constitutional crisis, right? Marbury versus Madison with Nazis this time. And I dropped out of law school, like Hal, I know you went to law school, but we are in a constitutional crisis right now, and how we respond over the next days and weeks is going to be important as a country. And I think, but back to your question about organizing within the Democratic Party, I guess I'm a big dim enter person, right? That unless there's something viable that can win immediately, our quickest way back is to get the Democratic Party to live up to its values. Kick the corporate Democrats out, push them to the side, become the senior partner in the Democratic Party. Now, it might not be realistic, but I was a big Ralph Nader supporter in 2000. I campaigned for Ralph Nader in 2000, Green Party, right? Chances are we probably cost Al Gore that election at some level. In the late 90s, I was part of this effort called the New Party, which actually ultimately becomes the Working Families Party. And it's sort of a hybrid system. So how do you keep one foot in and one foot out, but build, progressive and working class power? So right now, my focus is sort of, is then enter. How do we win tough elections against the establishment and then win tough elections against the Republicans? But without there being a street fight, without there being uprising, without there being, a showdown with, within this constitutional crisis, it doesn't really matter. I think, if you, I hear all these people talking about, these conservatives talking about how they're strict constitutionalists. But here we are in a constitutional crisis where they're obviously violating the Constitution, and their strict constitutionalism is kind of like walled up in their their weird analysis full of bad facts and bad acts. So so I guess at this point I'm a dim enter. We're actually making an effort to try and take over the Marion County Democratic Party, which is the Indianapolis Party, and working with this organizers and activists across the state and hopefully across the country to just try and take the party over. But I'd say this: without uprising and without confrontation and without calling out the bad acts going on right now, it's all moot. We've got to be in the streets fighting the fascists and the Republicans and this Elon Musk Donald Trump partnership.
Well, I made the point. I was talking to another guest yesterday who I think leans more towards your analysis than mine. But I made the point, and he agreed with it, that you can't be something with nothing. And as much as you and I may look at various aspects of Trump's actions, his agenda, his rhetoric, and be disgusted by it, revile it, there has to be, I believe, politically, to beat it, an alternative, a vision for an America that's different and better than the vision that Trump has presented. And I don't see the Democratic Party providing anything but the message that Trump is awful, Trump is unconstitutional, Trump's a fascist. Don't we need to have a vision from somebody in the party that will appeal to voters, and not just one person? I mean, I said somebody, but one that's embraced by the party itself.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, yes. But I would say that just to go back to this sort of third party platform or building the Greens up, like there's no it's just not viable, right? There is no Green Party movement. There is no mass organizing for the Green Party right now, right? No, Bernie Sanders had run as a third party candidate in 2024. That might have been the moment we'll look back on and say that was our moment, right, to build a working class party free of corporate Democrats and make you run for it. But he didn't do it, and we all kind of got in line.
Well, then I guess I would respond, isn't that our obligation, right? I mean, that's what I try to do with this tiny little live stream that I do. My YouTube channel is try to build a alternative to the Democratic Party. I mean, isn't that what we should be doing as organizers rather than, and I'm not saying you personally, but just when I look at various progressive organizations and institutions, and that includes media, that includes groups like the one we worked at, and comparable organizations, their answer seems to be, well, it's not viable. We can't, when it becomes viable, we'll join. We'll jump on that bandwagon when there's a bandwagon. But doesn't that kind of get it wrong? Shouldn't our job as organizers be to build that alternative and to create a future that is better for working people?
That's like, it's the Constitution. If we're going to follow the Constitution, right, which you're not right now, right? But it kind of sets up for a two-party state, just the way it's written. And I mean, one of the first elections I really paid attention to was the Ross Perot election. I was in 8th grade, and I was a Ross Perot guy just because that's where the energy was. And as an 8th grade, I don't be a Ross Perot guy, but I remember voting for him in our 8th grade election, and the moment was there for Ross Perot to win that election, right? The moment was there in 2024 for Bernie to maybe win that election. And we didn't take advantage of those moments. And so I think that might be the biggest failure is not taking advantage of the moments that pop up right in front of us. And I would say, back as a very young organizer in 2000 or 1998, 1999, there's a rumor that Paul Wellstone was going to run for president in 2000 against Al Gore, and sort of the progressive organizers that had the most talent in the country at that point turned him down. And imagine if we had run Paul Wellstone in the primary against Al Gore in 2000, what would have happened, right? So I think as organizers, sometimes we just fuck up and don't take advantage of the moment that pops us right in the head. Like even Bernie Sanders 2016, it took forever for that campaign to catch fire. And I remember when he announced, right, it was just like him, in the middle of a lunch break, hey, I'm running for president, and here we were, right? And it took a while for it to get going. And so I think as an organizer, part of it is you got to take advantage of what's in front of you. And if there is a Ross Perot, Paul Wellstone, Bernie Sanders moment, let's go. And we have, we'll have a couple of years to get. Even Barack Obama, right? Barack Obama was comes out of our movement, right? And he's the right person at the right time with the right critique. And we actually did take advantage of it. Like Barack Obama was our guy. He was our guy. Out of our movement. and he betrayed us, right? He didn't get there all the way, and left the door wide open for Trumpism. And so,
Doesn't that experience
we
though,
got to take advantage of what we got, and if the third party is viable and somebody's pulling that 25-30% a year out from the election, let's get going. But it's I think right now is you hear a lot of term called flooding the zone, right? From the Trump world, like they're flooding the flooding the zone where they're creating all these crises and seeing what sticks and what they can get through. And I think as progressive organizers and as hopefully Democrats or whatever, we are flooding the zone. We're fighting back in the streets. We're building coalitions. We're winning our neighbors over. Getting the working class, to kind of get their act together when it comes to how they vote. To be honest, and so I think we have a lot of work to do. But
doesn't the experience? Let me just jump in. Doesn't the Barack Obama experience and frankly the AOC experience argue or counsel against Dem enter, against Dem takeover? Because those are a couple of politicians that actually, as you said, were outsiders, certainly viewed as outsiders. Obama took the spot of the next in line, Hillary Clinton, and yet, as you said, he betrayed us in many ways. He betrayed the movement. And AOC was co-opted by the movement and giving that speech, caping for Genocide Joe, and then Killer Kamala at the Democratic National Convention. So doesn't that suggest that the Democratic Party isn't changed? It changes those who are able to enter it as change agents. It actually is the ultimately swarms around like the amoeba and enters it and controls and becomes a like a slave, like an ant slave. This worker ants go in.
I've seen that happen at the city council level. I've run somebody's campaign who basically lied to us the minute he got elected, and then he told people that once you get elected, you don't have to listen to the grassroots anymore. And this is a city council race, and he betrayed it. We ran him as a anti-charter school candidate, and he flipped to the charter school a week after he got elected, and in the primary, 9 months before he took office. And so it's like it's a real danger. Again, I don't know what else to do because the Green Party is so far away from power. Where's Jill Steiner right now? Is she out protesting? Is she out fighting? Where is she? I don't know where she is. Do you know?
I think that's a fair point. I don't have an answer to that.
Or, Bethesda?
I don't have an answer to that. She's from Massachusetts. She lives outside. I think she's from Somerville, where we have a friend, or she's close to there anyway. But no, I can't answer the question of where Jill Stein is. But and that is unfortunate. Love to see her lead a movement. Maybe she's doing stuff we don't know about. I know Shama Sawant.
She's not leading. She doesn't represent anybody. Minus this sort of discontent of our terrible two-party system that is seemingly unbreakable, right? But if I was her, I would be everywhere, in the streets, building alliances. I'd be driving a pickup. Hell, we've driven a pickup truck across the country building our causes up, right? Like, where are these people?
I'll tell you one non-party or non-unitary or non-duopoly person who is trying to build a movement is Shama Sawant from Seattle. She has created a group. She used to be part of, I think it was called Democratic Socialist or Socialist Alternative. Now she's put together this group called Workers Strike Back. They're having a convention in Seattle a week from, in about 10, 12 days. I don't know how big it'll be. Chris Hedges is going to be there. So there are folks out there trying to present an alternative. I don't think Stein is going to be at that event. I considered going out there, but it's just so far to go for a weekend. I didn't think it made sense for a variety of reasons. But there are some, but you're right. It's pretty small stuff. But let me just give you this as an alternative because, I think what Workers Strike Back is trying to do. I have issues with all of those groups too. By the way, we all fight with each other. We all have different views of how to promote a progressive vision. But I just want to play this clip. This is Jamie Raskin. This is from yesterday morning. And I was pretty pleased they asked this question. I just want your reaction to it. I put this question in the queue, and it was asked. So here we go, Mike. I hope you can hear this also.
Why are the Democrats offering an alternative, a more attractive vision for the American working people?
All right, so let me stop it. So you heard it, right? You heard the question. Yeah. Why aren't the Democrats presenting an alternative, more attractive vision? Say again?
Was that your question?
That was my question, and it was for Raskin. And it wasn't exactly, I wish he had asked it exactly the way I wrote it. I think he just was going quickly. And you could see, by the way, that image of those two seniors, I think, and no disrespect, and I love Holly and I love John, and they're great people. But this is part of the problem, right? It's not a young party. It's the young folks have abandoned the Democrats to a significant degree, Mike. So any comment on that before we get to the response from Raskin?
I my daughter who'll be voting for the first time in 2026. I just saw her Instagram daily story, and it's a picture of Kansas City Chiefs fans flipping off President Trump at the Super Bowl. So it gives me great hope that a lot of young people are going to engage in this moment. But there is a you heard the story about quote unquote big balls. You heard this story?
Yeah, the Musk
19-year-old goon, and so like there is like this extremely online young person culture, right? That is probably highly problematic. But knowing my daughter's friends and what I see from young people, I'm hopeful that they will learn the art of advocacy and organizing and building community and fighting back and not go down the Joe Rogan incel world of hateful politics. But we'll see. But look, a lot of times the older generation is they've kept young people out of power and out of leadership and out of mentorship. And so I think we got to do everything we can to build a multi-age, multiracial, friendly, fun to be involved in type of movement. Or Well,
my question really was, he said, why haven't they presented a vision? My question was, what is the Democratic vision? I actually didn't want the why not, because that gave him an out, as you'll hear in his response, give Raskin an out. But I wanted Tim to actually present a vision. And I think the answer to your point about your daughters, for the Democrat Party to really activate young folks, I think it has to present a vision of a sustainable economy, a sustainable, cleaner, greener environment, a pro-peace. Look, Obama won Indiana for a couple reasons, in my view. One was because the American people were sick of war. They were sick of W's of war. They realized what a mistake it was. And Obama had talked about getting out of Iraq. That was a very appealing message for working class voters, blue collar voters, families who had spouses, children, parents who serving multiple tours of duty. He presented a pro-peace alternative. The Democratic Party since then has become the party of war. Obama also talked a lot about health care. That was a big message in his campaign. He pushed for Obamacare. I thought it was on balance, the right move. It turned out not to have worked out nearly as well as I think many of us had hoped. It worked out well for the executives of the for-profit healthcare industry, but companies, but otherwise not so much. Not that it's terrible, not that it was necessarily worse, but it certainly hasn't been a panacea by any means. So I think the point I'm making is, again, if you want the Democratic Party to appeal to young people and win, it has to have a vision and stand by it for a better America.
Absolutely, and I think that's where the corporate Democrats have really screwed us, right? And then, I was with a bunch of union steel or. They're electricians working in the steel mills up in northern Indiana last night, and they were talking about like how they've it is a MAGA union that they're in right now, that they feel like it's a MAGA majority union, and that in Illinois, there's a lot of leverage politically to get things done as a union. But Indiana, it's just their quality of work is what keeps their wages a little bit higher than their non-union competitors, and working in these steel mills, I guess, right? But so yeah, there has to be a commitment to universal health care for the Democratic Party, right? We just have to end in the healthcare our healthcare system as we know it. We got to get universal health care. I think that has to, we have to distinguish ourselves on major fronts from the Republican Party, and when it comes to the environment, one thing I've seen as in this last year, working as sort of an urban forest, fighting to save urban forests at the local level. These are very popular environmental issues in Noblesville, Indiana, which is it's the largest city in Indiana that has all Republicans and all levels of leadership. And it's one of these, sort of cities that might become purple in 10 years, but right now it's all Republican. And we jammed so many emails into the city email system over saving these forests and this eagle habitat that we crashed our servers, and then the mayor threatened us, said that we were threatening him with violence. And so these are MAGA people in their 60s and 70s and 80s just trying to fight for their, for nature. And so, I think Democrats, we got to, like, on a very local level, healthcare, the environment, development, protecting green space, public schools, get the charter schools out of the Democratic Party. Let's have good public schools. Right now in Indiana, we hung out down at Indiana University a couple weekends ago to watch the Indiana University basketball team just fall apart. And now the coach is fired because of the Ginsburg family coming and watching that disgusting display of basketball. And
yeah, it's our fault.
The president of IU, Pamela Whitten, she was brought in to Indiana to really destroy the academic quality and faculty strength at Indiana University, one of the great universities of our country. And if you go back and do the research, all these Republican lawmakers are lined up behind her, right? So she's running an aggressive agenda that will destroy one of the great institutions of Indiana, and there's no real pushback on that. And so, we got to get very clear on what we stand for, get in the streets, win tough elections. We have to duke it out a couple times with melees. Let's do it. But let's really be clear on what we stand for. So universal health care, climate protection, stopping factory closings, public schools, creating good union jobs, so that's what we got to stand for. And that's what the Democratic Party does stand for, except for we get these corporate Democrats who have led us down a very wrong path.
All right. Well, you mentioned, just so I rarely put pictures of myself, and less rarely put pictures of my guests on. You were a great guest, so I wanted your image there. But we had that nice shot of you and my son and me. We had a great time visiting you, and thank you for being such a great host. We really had a great trip there. And of course, you can see William wearing the Maryland jersey, so I guess it is his fault. That was a really good time. That's a nice arena too. That Simon Schote. Is that how you pronounce it? SKJ. I don't know how you. Assembly Hall. Yeah, that makes it easy. And it's a beautiful campus. You mentioned I had been wanting to visit Indiana since 1979 when I saw the campus. When I say Indiana IU, since I saw the campus in the movie Breaking Away. I'm sure like a lot of other folks, and it did not disappoint. You mentioned the limestone that features in the movie, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, and I heard the story though that we have there's a professor there who is the #1 scholar in the country on Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, right? And I'm forgetting his stuff, right? We have the imperative. I forget what he's famous for, but
leap of faith. I think leap of faith is one of them, but also moral something imperative. You're right.
Yeah. So we should do some. We should have a real philosopher on here sometime. But he's the #1 scholar on Immanuel Kant. He's leaving Indiana at the end of this semester because he's sick of what's happening to this university. And my brother went to Indiana University in their SPIA program. He went in there as sort of a kid who was a little bit lost when it came to academics and what he wanted to be. And now he's the vice president of an international relief organization, helping feed the poorest of the poor. And coming back to Trump, and this idea of USAID under attack, and obviously federal bureaucracies and government agencies are complicated, imperfect. Can be used for good or bad. Can be used for imperialism or it can be used for feeding people, right? So very complicated. But with our government being taken over the way it is, we're jeopardizing, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people's health. And then, so just to flip it back to the migration and immigration, right? So we're making the world hungrier, which would make people want to leave their homeland to come here. And so Republican policy makes no sense. And it's just destroy right now. So Democrats have got to step it up and go on the attack wherever they can. This conversation will be worthless because we'll have a one-party state like we have here in Indiana, and no way out of it.
All right, let me play the clip here. Yeah. I was listening closely to what you said too, Mike, but I do want to get this because it's going to that issue of vision, and that was a question for Rask. And although they phrase it, why isn't the party presenting a vision? Here we go. See what you think. If it ever works, there we go. Oh, there we go.
Why are the Democrats offering an alternative, a more attractive vision for the American working people?
Let's see. I suppose I've got to say I disagree with the premise. I think we have a far more compelling and attractive program for the whole country, including the working class, including support for the right to organize and the right of collective bargaining. I mean, in addition to everything else that's being dismantled, they're trying to dismantle the Department of Labor. They fired all the Democratic members of the National Labor Relations Board. And despite their flirtation with a more moderate labor secretary appointee, I think a couple of dozen Republicans announced over the weekend that they were going to be moving to block her because she supported unions. So, I think we can talk about what we need to be doing to improve our organizing and our communications, but nobody, certainly on our side, should have any doubt about our commitment to the National Labor Relations Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, union organizing, and the defense of workers against union busting tactics. But Donald Trump is himself a union buster, along with Elon Musk and the whole gang. That's a party of union busters. So I'm happy to brainstorm, going forward about what we can do better in terms of political organizing. But hey, one of the things I've realized is life is very hard for people right now. I am not engaging in attacks on fellow Democrats and Democratic leaders. I'm not. If I feel like I've got a good idea or a better idea than someone, I'm going to advance it myself. But I'm not criticizing people who are under the gun right now. We're in the fight of our lives, and this is not a time for...
All right. So, yeah, and then that was basically it. And I think he said not a time for circular firing squad. And that was the end of that clip. So what do you think of that answer, Mike?
Look, Jamie Raskin, I think he's one of the best congressmen out there. In a lot of ways, he represents, my in-laws in suburban Maryland. I think he's also your representative. And, I think he's a very smart, committed person and, somebody that Democrats should be proud of to have on their team. I think that he's probably one of the best of the best, right? And that can be good or bad. But I've seen some, not being in DC, I'm missing these protests. But I saw like the Chuck Schumer, kind of getting just roasted, and and I see the Hakeem Jeffries that said the other day that Republicans have all the power, we can't do anything, sort of that kind of vibe. And so yeah, so it's tough, and but that's why, as Democrats, we got to make it very clear that we support universal health care, right? We support union rights in a real way. We support, at the very local levels, preserving our natural environment and doing stuff on climate change. And I think what happened with the Biden folks is, and we were around for this, they worked together on this stuff. They couldn't tell a story, right? They couldn't tell a story about what was going on in this country, but they could pass, the IRA or the Infrastructure Act, right? These big, massive bills that that really lacked the storytelling that Donald Trump had on carrier. And we actually tried to do this in West Virginia, where Joe Manchin, his daughter was somehow become the CEO of a pharmaceutical company that made life-saving generic drugs. They offshore that to India. She gets a $35 million bailout. This is a factory that is the best paying, largest union in West Virginia. And we begged and begged the Biden people to intervene and make this a flashpoint. That we were going to save this factory. It wasn't going to be offshored, and we were going to hold Joe Manchin accountable. So they and the International Steelworkers Union and the Biden administration punted. They let Joe Manchin get away with a huge crime, so they could eventually get the IRA passed, right? So they could have his vote a couple more times. And so it's sort of like, would the Democrats have been better to go after Joe Manchin and hold him accountable and maybe not get that IRA, or get what we have now, where we got some of these things passed. Now they're all in jeopardy. No good stories to tell. The working, it's brutal, and I think we screwed up. And so it's a mess, and the Democrats have nothing to do but blame themselves. But but going forward, we've got to be the party of universal health care, the party that's in the streets fighting for what's right, and and really holding these Republicans accountable to their actions. So a lot of work to do. I don't have a good answer, but yeah, it's kind of a weak answer, and he's probably one of the best, smartest people in Congress.
We'll see. And that's, there just isn't that vision thing. He just doesn't say, yes, we need an America where everybody, every working person, every person has health care at the point of delivery, where we no longer, have folks traveling 5-8 hours just to have their teeth looked at. He's got to say that. And he, where everyone has a safe, secure bed to sleep in every night. But I would argue, Mike, and this is where I don't know what your response would be, is that the Democratic Party ultimately owes its allegiance, or at least its leadership does, to its billion-dollar donors. And when it comes to choosing between possibly losing an election to a Donald Trump or, burning up that golden parachute that is waiting for you, as long as you keep doing what the billionaires want, they ain't going to burn up that parachute.
Yeah, no, you're right. And again, corporate Democrats have cost us everything, and there has to be a reckoning. There is a reckoning right now, but inside the party, there has to be some sort of reckoning and some sort of move, or we will be on this wilderness a very long time, maybe never to come out of it.
I just wanted to show this. This is an email I got from JD Vance today, because I signed up a while ago to be on their mailing list. I wanted to see what Trump was sending out. And I really do have to say their messaging is so much better, in my opinion, but I also want your take. So Vance sends us out, reach out to your most loyal supporters. So they have a little question Q&A. They say they want to get your opinion. They just want money. But that's not unique to Republicans, right? I mean, we get these fundraising emails from every different group under the sun, regardless of their politics. So the way they do it, it's such an easy, understandable soundbite. How do you view Trump's proposal to eliminate taxes on tips? Well, it's a sentence that you read it and you're like, oh yeah, things will be better for working people, for people who get tips. They'll be like, of course, I don't want to pay taxes on tips. And we spent all that time on the fight for 15 and, no, and I think it was the right move, right? No, what was it? $15 tips on top, whatever, where you eliminate the tipped wage, right? That was the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I support that. I think that's really the right answer, but it's harder to explain. And people who make more than 15 an hour from their tips aren't necessarily going to be happy with it. This is just so simple. I'm getting rid of your taxes on tips. It's a attractive messaging. How do you view the proposal to eliminate taxes on Social Security? Again, very, very simple, right? How do you view the proposal to eliminate taxes on mandatory overtime? I mean, you can see why people would find that appealing. And then, the largest deportation. I mean, I said unfavorable, but a lot of people are like, yeah, let's get rid of those illegals as they would view it. I think that's horrific, but it's an easy, simple soundbite. And then how do you view his proposal to stop outsourcing? And I'm not saying this is honest. I know these aren't policies that Trump necessarily even believes in. He just talks about them and he often undermines them. But the sound bites are so appealing.
That's a question that I spent a lot of time on. And we know Trump's a liar and a fraud. But his messaging has won over the people, a lot of people. And like I said, the Democrats, Joe Biden shows up on a picket line. He is a pro-union president, and it barely moves the needle. And so I think a lot of it is the messenger, a lot of it is the storytelling, right? A lot of it is the relationships. And Democratic Party seems out of touch and with its working class base. And it's and I'll just, I know we're wrapping up here, but coming out of COVID, the Biden folks did a pretty good job, right? Getting us through a pretty scary time in American history, and they supercharged the economy so we wouldn't have a depression. And so they're getting blamed for stuff that people barely remember because we were in such a crisis. And I think if Biden had been a one-term president, like he said he was going to be, there was a real primary happening in 2024, we might have avoided this mess, right? Maybe not dealt with all of our systematic problems, but that's what we find ourselves in. We found the insiders who gave Joe Biden bad advice. I can't believe he's taking advice from Hunter Biden, right? This bad and dumb decision making that will cost us. And if he had to follow his advice to be the one-term president, real primary happens. We probably don't get a Trump 2.0.
All right, we've had a great show today with Mike Oles.
We put it to rest, the Biden-Trump Clinton era.
All right, I don't want you to, don't leave yet. I got a follow-up final kind of question to wrap up, but I do want to also just let folks know, great show today with Mike Oles. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by Andy Ellis. He's running for governor in 2026 here in Maryland on the Green Party banner or under their banner or however you say it on their ticket. So we're looking forward to having Andy back on the program with a slightly different take. Our mayor, by the way, our governor, Wes Moore, Mike, proposed pretty significant cuts to the University of Maryland budget. So it isn't just Republican governors who are cutting education budgets. Also, so-called progressive Democrats are doing the same. Here's my question. You said, we might have had a different result.
Hopefully Maryland gets some NIL money to keep it up with the basketball level.
Well, our basketball team's looking good right now. I have to say they've had a pretty good run right now, and I think they're going to continue it into the tournament. Your team, unfortunately, will be sitting at home.
We get a new coach, though. So
you might make the NIT. You might make the NIT. Yeah, not a great sports weekend for the Midwest either, with Kansas City going down in flames. I mean,
we were all Eagles, though. We were all.
You're all, yeah. I was rooting for the Eagles too, frankly. So here's the question I have, though. You said we could have had a different result if Biden had, announced in 22 or 23, yeah, one term, I said it, we'll have a real primary. Who would you see as an attractive, appealing candidate for the Democrats, either in 24 or 28?
It's a great question. I think to your point earlier about what the vision is, and do we get somebody who's on universal health care? Does somebody like Andy Bashir, out of Kentucky, make a commitment to, some Bernie Sanders style politics? I think somebody's got to carry the Bernie Sanders mantle in a real meaningful way, or the Paul Wellstone mantle in a real way, and that person would be the favorite, I would think. But it's a little unclear.
I haven't. Andy Bashir so far has not made that commitment, and I would just throw this at you, Mike. If he did, would he not immediately be pilloried by and, attacked by the CNN, by MSNBC? To the extent they still have some power, which isn't that much, but also by the Jim Clyburns and et cetera, who do have, a lot of influence.
Perhaps, but I think, whoever does that can defend themselves and make the case and I think shut those critics down pretty quick. But yeah, I'm just not feeling the. I'm hoping somebody emerges to carry that Bernie Sanders mantle, and makes a real run at it. We've been around Jeff Merkley a little bit, right? We've been around a couple of these guys, but it'll have to be somebody that can carry that progressive and populist grassroots message, and we'll get them elected. If we have elections, right? But we have a long time between now and then.
I wouldn't call him a populist by any means, but I do think Chris Van Hollen, if he had entered in 24, I think he could have beaten. I think if he had been the nominee, let's put it that way, I think he would have beaten Trump. He just presents himself in a far more professional manner. He answers questions directly. He has a little bit of pro-peace cred. I think he would have defeated Trump in 20 because it was a close race.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing right now is Pete Buttigieg is very popular, and Pete being the son of a post-Marxist Notre Dame scholar about Antonio Gramsci, right? Like maybe Pete can go back and listen to his dad's lectures and find a little bit of a backbone and adapt the values of his father. Maybe we have a chance to get Pete to. No, we take converts, right? We got to find some converts, maybe, if we don't.
Isn't he a McKinsey guy? Isn't he a McKinsey consultant, Mayor Pete? I think I'm not putting much faith in him as a candidate. CNN seems to like John Fetterman. So there you have that.
I don't think John has the health or the mentality to run. I think he, as much hope as we had for him, I think that one is
that was one of those. I throw him in the 10 times worse than AOC camp, actually. What a disappointment he proved. All right, Mike, I got to let you go unless you got any final words. Otherwise, you keep the flag flying.
Yeah, let's wrap it up and we'll hang out soon in person.
All right, well, that'll do it then with Mike Oles. He's organizer extraordinaire. And I'll be back. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you all for being part of Halitics. And we'll try to get some callers maybe tomorrow with Andy if you have any questions for our Green Party choice. And let me get that. I shouldn't have that countdown there. It's sort of had the wrong